G'day friends, welcome to SKETCHFLIX Plus. It has been a hot minute since I've done a SKETCHFLIX episode, and honestly, I couldn't have picked a better movie to do this with. I can't even believe it took me this long to get to it. I did start all my SKETCHFLIX episodes usually moving towards more animated films because I thought it'd be easier to pull inspiration from, but towards later last year, I did get more of those live action films in there, and I found that they were just as easy to pull inspiration from. So, before we get started, let's just say it. Devil Wears Prada is the best movie that's ever been made, and there's no arguments here, so we can just move forward. Look, I don't know. It's definitely up there for me, and I think for the most part, it's because it's the most quotable movie for me. There's probably not a day that goes by where I don't use a quote from The Devil Wears Prada, especially when Steve's doing Etsy shipping. It's my favorite. Please, by all means, move at a glacial pace. You know how that thrills me. Look, I don't really say that to him, but I'm definitely thinking it. No, he loves it too. He loves to quote the movie. I think literally he just left the house. I mean, I just watched this, so it's going to be more fresh in my mind, I know, but he was like, wish me luck, and I was like, no, shan't. And that sends me. I don't know what's wrong with me, that's my type of humor. Thank goodness he gets it. Could you imagine if he'd never seen the video? He would think I'm crazy. The things that I love about it, fashion, back in the day, back as a, early tween, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I thought it would be very up my alley. I love the fantasy of fashion. I love it's insane. These hyper-realistic clothes and these garments that look sculpted and structured, and they're made out of the most exotic things that are found on the planet, and the models that are wearing them are so unbothered, and they're usually photographed in the most bizarre locations or the weirdest, kind of creative direction that goes into it. It's a full fairy tale fantasy that I really do think exists in real life, and I would love to live in that. So, because I'm not a model yet, and I don't own all of these garments, I just have to settle for my shorts and my t-shirts. No, I do like to draw it a lot. I've more than probably ever wanting to create the fashion, I loved to draw it. And that sounded really weird. Draw it. I love the fantasy of drawing it, and I think it was just as engaging and exciting for me to be able to do fashion illustration as it was to actually sit down and sew the garment together. I found a lot of the time when I was sewing, I was very stressed because it was a lot to think about. I did enjoy it. Like, I don't really sew much anymore, but it was the fashion illustration that I think got me the best. And it was probably what I decided to learn before I decided to learn anything else in illustration. So a lot of my roots in illustration, I always kind of attribute back to whatever I learned during those fashion illustration days. So proportions being completely skewed and the bodies being very grotesquely angular, which I really love. Copic markers. I had my first set of Copic markers when I was, 15, I think? And actually I had Prismacolor markers before that. I wanted to get them for school because I was doing design and technology, and I knew that that's what fashion designers use, the alcohol markers, so that's what I wanted. And I've learned a lot of illustration through fashion illustration, so it just made sense that as I was learning it, I would want to draw the body that the clothes were wearing, and I'd want to draw the face that I saw, that the mood that accompanied that outfit. So that's where I would start to try and teach myself how to draw that certain type of a face, or how to make that body look like it did in the photos that I was looking at. So a lot of I will just attribute a lot of what I learned in illustration, in those early parts, to what I loved about fashion. In those early teenage years where you're really kind of getting into it all. So that is, I think that's also why I love this movie so much. It is obviously completely focused on fashion and that, crazy world of fashion. I will say, I don't know much about the world of fashion, but I do know some people in it. And the movie is not that far off. I mean, it was based off of a book written by someone who had been the assistant to, or interned as the assistant to or something, Anna Wintour, who is the editor-in-chief of American Vogue, which, so I mean, you don't have to make a crazy leap here to realize that Meryl Streep's greatest performance as Miranda Priestley is very realistically based off of Anna Wintour in real life, which I find fascinating. I also like that movie. I think it's a documentary called The September Issue, and I think you really do get a good look at that, what kind of formulated that Miranda Priestley character, because, I mean, Anna Wintour is great at keeping very stoic, but there are some things that the camera catches that you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, she means business. And I love that. truly, I think in my business, I think in JLB Creative, I am the Miranda, the Emily, and the Andy, all rolled into one. Just depends what day you catch me on. And for the most part, my leadership style is probably a little dictatory. It's probably very Miranda. No, I mean, I think I'm a little nicer than Miranda. I don't know. I don't work with anyone, so it's anyone's guess, to be fair. We should all just take a moment to be thankful that I don't have any employees to test that theory. I know what I'm like with myself, though, and I think I identify with a lot of Miranda because she is just about excellence, nothing less. That is it. That's what she'll strive for. I'm not so into the underhandedness, like stomping over people to get there, but I do admire someone who is completely focused on, achieving the best at all times. I don't know, it's just something that speaks to me, and I think that's pretty much why her character does a lot of what she does. And I don't know, the things that fascinate me about the movie, I guess, aren't really what this SKETCHFLIX episode is about. The reason I say it's SKETCHFLIX Plus, I will just mention, if no one has seen a SKETCHFLIX episode before, it started on my YouTube channel, I think earlier 2018. I started with animated features, and then I moved into live action as well. I just put on a movie. It was, at first, a good way to be able to watch television while I was working and still make sure that I was working. I do love a good bit of television and some movies, but as my work schedule got really crazy, I found it really difficult to watch anything at all, really. So I would put the movie on and kind of quote-unquote relax, open the book, and film myself just sketching through the movie. And it takes about 10 to 15 minutes every single time. Like, I've never really, unless I've done back-to-back ones, but even then that's a little stressful. But it takes a little bit to get warmed up into the process, because usually you're pulling all this inspiration and it's quite literal at the beginning, but as you kind of warm up into it, you let yourself pull more abstract inspiration, or you start drawing other random things because your brain has gone somewhere else, or you're drawing an idea from a quote that you heard rather than a visual that you've seen. So it's been really, really interesting to especially dive into the live action films, because those are really hard to pull visual references from, as far as, when you're drawing, because we're drawing so two-dimensionally, and, when you're drawing really quick, you can't really add any kind of photorealistic, detail. Otherwise, even if you spent the entire SKETCHFLIX on one drawing, you still have to admit that like an hour to 2 hours on one drawing is still not a ton of time. So that's why I let myself not worry about the quality of the drawings. I do like to, try in some areas, but for the most part, there is no thought involved. It is just draw what you're thinking, draw what you just saw, draw what you just heard, draw anything. I don't know. If there's nothing happening, just write the quotes that you're hearing. So it's a really interesting process, because you're forced to leave a lot of expectation at the door. In fact, I've chatted to people that have done SKETCHFLIX episodes before. There are some other people that have done SKETCHFLIX episodes on YouTube, which I would encourage you to check out, because they do really, really well as well. And because you have to leave the expectation at the door. The only way to actually get through this and get all of these illustrations that are, inspired by whatever you've been watching, is to agree to with yourself that they're not going to be that great. They're not going to look fully finished. They're not going to represent the best parts of your skill, but they are going to capture your ideas. And essentially, once you are finished, you have a whole bunch of reference images or reference ideas to use in the future. And I have used a lot of stuff that's happened in SKETCHFLIX before to inspire or to like pull into a style of working, well beyond the episode. So it's inspiration in another place. It is a creative exercise. It's one of those things where, you really want to get outside of your ideas of achieving a lot and just be in the process, just to flex on your skills. This is going to help you, get quicker at the decision making as well as the illustration, because you have to not labor over something if it's not really working. You just have to be, decisive and leave it. That's a good skill to work on, as well as being quick at illustrating. I don't think anyone's ever been mad that they've quickened up their illustrating skills. I know it certainly helps for me. It's a very productive tool to be a quick illustrator, especially if you are doing other work that, you need to be a bit neater with, or maybe the concepts are a little bit more challenging. It's a good skill to have, to be a quick illustrator. Yes, just to get your ideas out, to see if something's going to work, or if you should abandon it before you even start. So that's a good skill for me to work on. It is fun because you're watching the movies that you love, but I don't think it is fun in the sense that you'll sit there and you'll feel relaxed. This is still an exercise, and you're still going to have to, put a bit of effort towards this. It's totally worth it, though. I mean, for myself anyway, if I can just give you a few examples. And I'll just say SKETCHFLIX Plus. So SKETCHFLIX on my YouTube channel is just, me talking through the movie, and we just go for it. SKETCHFLIX Plus is just, there's bonus material in playtest in the Patreon offering. I have put a PDF together for you with scans of all of the images that I created, including all the little quotes. It's basically just all of those pages, the 6 pages, scanned onto a PDF for you. And there's a list of supplies that I grabbed. Not everything that you see on the screen, but the ones I actually did grab to use in the video today, just in case you were curious. And I put timestamps on the screen. And that's also something that I didn't know would be interesting until I did it for Patreon in 2018. We did the live action Parent Trap with Hayley Mills. And there was this one Peter Pan collar that was the quickest illustration I did in that whole SKETCHFLIX. And it was a matter of seconds. Like, it didn't take very long at all. I just liked the collar that I saw on the screen. I took that collar and it kept showing up over and over and over and over again throughout the SKETCHFLIX, but then even throughout Inktober. Like, everything I was doing, I kept trying to pull this Peter Pan style collar into it just because I saw it on the screen and I thought, I love that. I love that right now. That's going to work for me right now. And I'm going to keep using that until I run that idea dry, and I'll find a new collar to use. So it's super beneficial for me because, I don't know, sometimes you find things you just want to keep around, and that's always a good thing. One of the other ones that was probably the most prominent, and maybe you might have seen before, pop up in all of its versions, is when I did Alice in Wonderland. There was a part in the movie where the Cheshire Cat was disappearing, and you could see the transparency, but it was kind of like the stripes on his skin, like not his skin, but like the furry stripes. It looked like they were ribbons wrapped around his body. And I was like, oh, that's real. I love ribbons. Like, I've always loved ribbons. So I'm going to draw that. I drew a really, really crude version of the Cheshire Cat with ribbons as a body. And that showed up again and again and again and again and again. I did a seahorse from Mermaid 2018 that was made of ribbons. I did a unicorn for Junicorn that was made of ribbons. There's been ribbons again. I did another ribbon mermaid this year. There have been a lot of times when I've used this, shaped, sculpted ribbon technique that I did first get from a SKETCHFLIX episode from a very, very bad drawing. So it doesn't need to be good for you to take the idea and run with it in the future, but it's good to get the idea down. If I didn't do it in that movie, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have, just come up with it from Mermaid, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have kept using it over and over and over again because maybe the idea would never have come up. So, I don't know. That for me is why I think SKETCHFLIX is a great exercise. You're going to get stimulated because you're watching something that you're familiar with or that you think is fun or you really, really love. Maybe it's very deep. So far, I think the only dramatic one I've done was Memoirs of a Geisha. That was a little dramatic to do, but I really did enjoy that because I just love that film. It's hard, though. It was a little hard to pull inspiration from that one in the sense that the visuals were just also quite heavy and quite dramatic. Lighter fare for me, I think, is easier to pull inspiration from. And especially things that I'm very, very familiar with. So, I haven't done The Wizard of Oz yet, and I don't know when I'm going to do that. It is my favorite movie of all time, and I'm having a bit of that Neverland mermaid problem with it. If you don't know, I have this fear of drawing the Neverland mermaids from Peter Pan because they are probably the most iconic imagery I have in my head for what I've always loved. I've always loved that since I was a little boy, and I've never stopped loving that imagery, that visual that's in my head. It brings back so much nostalgia, and I just love those mermaids so much. So I don't want to. I've tried drawing them a bunch of times before, but I never quite get it, and it always just irritates me because I just can't seem to leave my expectation for that one. So typically I'll stay away from it just so I can avoid the disappointment. I do try every now and again, and as it is, have I shown you? Yeah, you've seen this one. Well, I don't know if you've seen it, what I'm actually referring to, because it's a part of a product for the Playbox in September, but I have managed to draw some mermaids that really give me those Neverland vibes, and I'm now not so scared of it anymore. In fact, I'm really, really living for it. So, I think you might have seen it. It was when I was doing the little journal, the Moleskine, when I broke in the new journal. one of those pages in there has a blue mermaid on it. I was using collage sheets, and I turned the collage sheet, I think it was the journal with me, the collage sheets. I turned the little image into a mermaid. It's that one, but I have since re-illustrated those, so I'll leave that for another time. But, you know, The Wizard of Oz is one that I probably should SKETCHFLIX, because I just think, I mean, it's my absolute favorite of all time. And I guess I could do it again if I just didn't love the first version, but that's kind of not the point, is it? I don't know. I'm going to talk myself off a ledge there. But yeah, so SKETCHFLIX Plus, you'll have all of the images to actually look at and take a closer look at on the PDF, as well as the supply list and then the timestamps. But the timestamps are just really interesting to note as they kind of flash across the screen, because sometimes you will spend longer on a piece that you might deem less important to the whole process. And it's not like you should stop drawing because of it, but sometimes it helped me understand that even if I've got a shorter amount of time, that even if I think this is just going to be a throwaway sketch, sometimes those can be the most important piece for you moving forward. They might be the missing link. They might be that one puzzle piece that you've been searching for ages that just finally makes the rest of your puzzle come together a lot easier. So I don't discount the fact that some of these illustrations might have taken 1 minute, and some of them might have taken 7 minutes. So, you know, the ones that took 7 minutes, I don't necessarily like more, and maybe there's less of an idea there. Maybe I will be inspired by the ones that look the ugliest but have the better idea, like the Cheshire Cat, the ribbon. That was not one of my favorite illustrations. It was probably one of my least favorite illustrations from that SKETCHFLIX, but the idea that I took forward the most. So I just want to encourage you, if you are going to try it, my tips for trying SKETCHFLIX are always stick it out for the first 10 to 15 minutes, because you will be tempted to go very literal, and it can be quite frustrating because you'll be asking yourself, why aren't I inspired? Like, where are all my good ideas? I say that to myself all the time, and even now, I mean, I've done many of these SKETCHFLIXs, I still get confused why at the start I'm too literal, but it does take a little bit to get into it. It moves very quickly, so try not to pull too much of a visual cue from what you're looking at, because you'll just be disappointed that the frame's already moved forward. You could pause the movie, I guess, but I think you're kind of working against the exercise if you're doing that. But if it really does matter to you, I mean, don't listen to me. Rules are rules to be broken, right? So I wouldn't listen to me, but my advice would be to take it as it comes and to really go quickly through the process and just be quick about capturing your idea. Don't worry about finishing it. If you don't need to finish it, if you've got the idea down, then go for it. If you've got a little more time in the movie because your ideas are, they've slowed down a little bit, then work with some more time in some of your pieces. I do slow down a little bit towards the end of the movie just because, sketching for an hour to 2 hours isn't a big deal, but when you're trying to do a lot of sketching, it can feel like a little exhausting. And my other tip, probably my best tip for you as well, I always say you can be inspired by the imagery or the visuals, but you can also be inspired by the mediums and the tools that you're using. So make sure the tools that you've got spread out accessible to you aren't completely don't go overboard with it. Don't bring everything from your art supply warehouse to the table. Just bring a bunch of stuff and maybe even vary it up. Don't bring all the colors. Just grab a random selection, because being limited in that way too, you're going to have to pick them really quickly, and sometimes you'll end up with a really interesting mix of those colors or mediums, and you might be able to move forward with that as well. That has also proven really useful for me as far as, some techniques and some supplies that I liked working with together. I think that's really helpful and beneficial as well to get the most out of it. So, I hope you enjoyed this SKETCHFLIX Plus. I love The Devil Wears Prada. It is Meryl Streep's best performance. I'm going to stand by that. Poor Meryl. I don't think she wants it to be known as the best performance, but she's very talented. She does everything very well, but this is the penultimate Meryl Streep performance for me. I also love Anne Hathaway in it as well. Emily Blunt is incredible. I just love everything about this. There's nothing to not love about it. And I probably need to go on that cube of cheese diet pretty soon. Just kidding. I'm not going to do it. I really like that Eiffel Tower chick too. I like the whole thing. I loved it. And I love Miranda Priestley. Thank you so much for joining me for this SKETCHFLIX Plus. If you're going to try a SKETCHFLIX, please tag me in it so I can have a look and cheer you on. Until next time, enjoy this little clip that I found on the internet and I downloaded and I put into the video just for you. Bye.